Start recording.
Yeah, I graduated in May, but I still have to take that class.
She said you have to have been by 8.
I mean, well, right after. Because I was like, I'm not taking that. With all that stuff, I don't know how y'all did it. And I'm not a good math person either, so I thought they would be like horrible.
It's up to you. We're still missing about 8.
It really wasn't as bad.
Really? My first class was I hear he's like a really good teacher.
And then we get my last class was for the pepper is going to be happy.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He's a great guy.
How was the summer? I didn't take summer classes.
I only took one last class. I had to take the construction class. But I already
Yeah, I already took that.
yeah, so I'm every weekend.
Right.
Yeah, they're all.
I know, it's weird from here.
Okay, good morning. I think that they still expect a few more people, but let's get started. My name is Tracy Launschlager. I'm a lawyer with the law firm Greenberg Traurig. I practice in the area of land use as well as some other governmental related areas of practice. I was formerly an assistant county attorney for Broward County, where I did land use regulation and some land use and environmental litigation. And then I represented our airport for about 8 of my 16 years in Broward County government, and I did land development and construction contracting work for them. So that's my background. We're going to take some time to do some introductions later. I want to break up the lecture. I can't even stand the sound of my own voice that long. So we're going to jump right in to the content this morning, and then we'll stop and do some housekeeping on the course structure and the assignments, and we'll do some introductions and things like that intermittently. But I wanted to get our brains working right away. So, understanding land use regulation, what can it do for me? For those of you, and I'll learn about your backgrounds, but if you haven't been exposed to land use regulation, it seems like a burden. It seems like something that's intended to stall your project, to delay a project, to withhold the benefits of the land. But it's important to understand the value of what it can do for you. It contributes to land value. It will be part of this class to develop an understanding of what it means to own real estate, what you can do with real estate, what you can't, and getting a good understanding of that as a way of evaluating land before you purchase, before your company gets involved in a project. You need to understand the complexity of obtaining land use entitlements and the time that's required. Because when a project is being staffed up, time is money. And the longer that team needs to work on entitlements, the greater the carrying cost of the land will become. So understanding truly, realistically, the timing of obtaining land use entitlements will be an important part of this. There's there are multiple layers of regulation that affect land development. Very, very local, what I would call the sub-local. There are drainage districts throughout the state of Florida that have one purpose only. They were created by the legislature in the 1930s, and they have a fiefdom of controlling the lakes and canals in a very small area of land. So I call those sub-local government. And then cities and counties, and state regulatory agencies and federal regulatory agencies. There are multiple layers, and their regulatory schemes do not work in concert. They work at cross purposes often. So understanding those schemes will be part of what we learn. And I think that you'll be studying, as I understand it, your other class, is it economics based? What's the other class that most of you are taking right now?
Real estate development.
Real estate development. But you'll understand the contribution that land development contributes to the tax base, and a little bit of the tax structure of these agencies that we're dealing with, and the tension that arises between local elected officials who want to approve a project because they want to see the development come to their community, they want to see it affect their tax base, and they want to represent the neighbors that show up in their office, they hear from and say, no, 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 don't do this. So that tension is something you would encounter in the land development process. And then we'll understand who the stakeholders in that process are and learn how to work with them, how to see it from their perspective, understand what they need to get out of it to make it a win, so that you can find a way through consensus to get the development to move forward. So all of these regulatory processes are processes that have rules, and understanding a little bit about the rules that you're working with will help you move the project along. Sometimes, let me give an example. You may make an application to a city, and you go through the first level of review, and you understand that next you get to go to the Planning and Zoning Board, which is the last advisory step before you go to the City Commission, and you're moving along, and then the city calls you up and say, you know, we were supposed to place an advertisement, and we forgot, so you're going to roll a month. Or, you were supposed to place the advertisement. You were supposed to post signs at the site. You haven't brought me the affidavit to prove to me that you posted notice. We're rolling you 2 months. Those kind of things, and it's procedural, and you're like, you just want to throw up your hands. But understanding those procedures will be part of your ability to move your project along. Ethical issues. Ethical issues are really hard to recognize until they're hitting you in the back, in the back of the head. Good morning. And there is a sign-in sheet circulating. Is it moving along? Okay. So having some sensitivity to what the ethical issues are, the rules that govern the elected officials, the rules that govern the local staff, when you're dealing with neighbors, third-party objectors, other regulatory agencies, there are some do's and don'ts in there that are really our ethical rules, and we'll try to get a grip on some of those, or at least create some sensitivity to those issues, so you know when to inquire. But they vary a great deal from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So understanding what the different members in a development team can do can be helpful. And those of you who are immersed in the development, programs already, and this is very familiar to you, I apologize, but sometimes you need to learn the basics of what does the engineer do versus the architect. What can a traffic engineer do for me? What can a planner do for me? And do I need those kinds of expertise on my team? When I have a certain kind of permit, do I need a specialist in tree removal, in dredge and fill? Some of those specialized permitting issues. So we'll learn through the course of this a little bit about the scope of all those disciplines. What can a surveyor do and versus an engineer? The last few times I've taught this class have been more scheduled in the summer, and really local governments pretty much shut down for about 6 or 8 weeks over the summer, and we were never able to go together to a public hearing. I'll have to start looking at schedules and see whether there will be an opportunity for you to attend a final hearing on a project at a local government here in town, maybe in an evening during the week. And I don't think it would be mandatory, but if I can find a good project that's going to reach its final public hearing here locally, we'll let you know, and we'll see whether you can get to attend that kind of public hearing. Sometimes they're mind-numbingly dull and they go through very quickly, and sometimes there's hundreds of people who show up to complain about the traffic and the parking. That's mostly what they complain about. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go back to the top and talk a little bit more about class structure. Traveling the last 2 days. Both my kids are students at UF, and my daughter had a problem and ended up in the hospital for a couple of days. She's fine, but we ran up to Gainesville Thursday and came back late last night. So, pardon me if I'm a little tired this evening. Okay, so you know who I am. Did everybody get the syllabus from school, from the source, from Blackboard? Nobody. It was not available on Blackboard. No, that's bad. Okay, I emailed you guys with some materials, but I did not realize you didn't have the syllabus already. You didn't have the syllabus.
At the orientation session, you gave a handout, but I'm not sure if that is a complete syllabus or just a generic syllabus. Is it a detailed syllabus?
It was. It had the assignments. Okay. I emailed you all. Who did not get an email from me? Everybody get an email from me? Okay. I will email you the syllabus. You'll see that you will be behind on reading assignments already. Again, I'm not going to call and ask you to recite if I can tell you what law school is like. You'll have time to catch up on the reading assignments, and there are a lot of background, it's a lot of background reading to what we'll be talking about. And again, I thought that the syllabus was circulated through other means, so I apologize for that. I'm not including it when I sent out that other email. The textbook is, and I think you should be aware of that, the nutshell book. That was the nutshell book. Okay. Did this information get to everybody? All right. So the first couple.
Well, we all have the syllabus because you gave that revised chapters 1 and 2.
I guess some people weren't at the orientation, so they didn't pick up the syllabus there. Okay. Again, you'll have time to catch up, and I think you'll benefit from the class today, of course, even without having done the reading. I circulated in the email a couple chapters of a book by a guy named Mandelker, so I apologize if it's hard to read. You'll find a lot of crossover information between the nutshell and the Mandelker couple of chapters. There's a little bit more of the legal background in the Mandelker book.
Can I raise a question?
Yes.
Your bibliography suggests the 4th edition, but I got a 5th edition. Are there significant differences? No, I'm talking about the Mandelker.
I don't know. The chapters that I circulated were not from the edition that was referenced. Is that what you're saying? Or just the Mandelker, I don't need you to buy the Mandelker book. It's like a hardcover horn book. You bought it? I'm sure it's fine. I don't know whether it was reorganized in any way to where the chapters don't match. Yeah.
But you will be circulating anyway the chapters on that.
I did already.
Yeah, the two.
Yes, that's it. That's all we need for Mandelker.
Okay.
So,
For the duration of the class?
yes, yes, yes. Okay, we'll get it sorted out. Who was aware, who did have the syllabus, and who did have the syllabus already? Yes, you did have syllabus.
Blackboard isn't downloaded. I don't know if you know having a problem, but Blackboard, even for the other classes, syllabus isn't downloading.
Okay, I'll email everyone the syllabus.
And I just like having lessons.
Okay, sorry about that. The recommended reading, I know some of the other professors in this program feel strongly about this, and I do think it is worth your time each day to look at the Daily Business Review, to look at the Wall Street Journal or something like it. I buzz through the Daily Business Review every day. And it gives me a sense of what's selling, what isn't, what development is moving forward, how quickly some properties turn. It just gives you the context of the pond that we're swimming in a little bit, so you know how deep the water is. So if you're not already doing something like that, I do encourage it. ULI, do you all get urban land as like your student members of ULI and so on? Very good stuff. It gives you a sense of what's going on in other parts of the country, because the setting for land development can be very different in other parts of the country. Some places are way ahead of us, I feel, and some places are lagging. So, so do that. So you have, and here's the assignment schedule for the nutshell reading. Okay, today was 1 and 2. Next class is chapters 3, 4, and 10. Then 7, 8, 9, and you can see this. I'm trying to remember if 11 and 12, let's see if they, no. So you don't have to read 11 and 12 if we've just run out of time. So everybody who didn't have the syllabus got what they need from that? Okay. Because our days are so long, and again, I don't like to hear the sound of my own voice all the time, I'm going to try to incorporate even more class exercises than I did in my last class. This will involve role playing, probably. We'll have a development scenario that I'll give to you, and I'll have you step in and play some of the roles in the development process. In our last class, we'll do an extended exercise like that, where the roles that you'll be in the developer team, you'll be in the local government staff team, elected official, or neighborhood objectors. And you'll read the problem, we'll have a truncated version of a land development code for you, and you'll take those roles in the advancement of a project, and then you'll switch, and you'll have to take up the roles of other participants in the project and get an understanding of how to advocate for those interests, understand where they're coming from, and overcome their objections. But I'm going to try to do a little bit more of that interim to kind of break up the long days. There will be, the first assignment will be a case study, and it will be done in teams. And let me ask you first, do you feel strongly about being able to team up with who you would like to team up with because you live close, you're in contact?
Yes.
You want to choose your own teams?
Yes.
Okay. Think about this. I'm going to let you break up and select those teams now. The project will require an analysis of an approved or almost approved project here somewhere in Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. And at a minimum, there are many, many projects that have the zoning that they need, that have the land use that they need, and all they do is go through a site plan approval process. I need you to find a project that has at least a rezoning involved to study it, okay? There are fewer and fewer comprehensive plan amendments needed for projects in our 3 counties now. The planning process has become more flexible. But if you find one that requires a land use plan amendment, plus a rezoning, plus a site plan, that's great. That would be great too, because you get to read the staff reports and understand the analysis that goes on behind a land use plan amendment. But at a minimum, it's got to have a rezoning and a site plan. So that would be, and you'll pull the records Most of them are available online in most of these jurisdictions, but they may not be. The older the project is, the less likely it is that you will find all of the records online. And you'll have to go to the local government and through public record requests, ask for the records of the project. You'll need to review the staff reports and the minutes of the meetings at which the project was approved, and analyze the issues that were difficult about the project and how they were resolved, and then you'll have to make a presentation about the project. To the extent you can provide your own economic view of the project, that it was fully approved but it didn't go forward, and this is why I think that happened, because the market changed in this way, or it became stagnant and was reinvented, you know, at a later year and moved forward. Any economic analysis you can provide would be great too. But at a minimum, you identify the project. It must have a rezoning and site plan. You pull the records, including the staff reports and the minutes of the approval of the project, and you analyze the project and present it in these teams. Any basic questions about it?
Just about the PowerPoint, would you be providing the PowerPoint on Blackboard or the presentation PowerPoint that you will be using?
I don't know if I can figure out how to do that, but I have a Google. I can send you a link to a Google Drive.
Okay.
So if no other way, after a class, I'll make the PowerPoint available to you. But I'm really kind of old-fashioned, and I know that I learn well when I take notes, because I'm still learning too, and I sit in lectures and training and things all the time, and I learn when I take notes. So just like humor me and bring a piece of paper and take notes sometimes. That would make me really happy. But I will share my PowerPoint presentations with you. Yeah.
You said the staff reports and minutes are likely online or not likely online? Are we gonna have to go to the county zoning office or?
The first process will be when you'll be searching local government databases to identify your project. So it may be that you live in Northwest Broward County, so you want to look at Coral Springs and Coconut Creek and Parkland and look at their websites for what current development projects they have going through. Because if you have to go and knock on the door, you know, if you have to walk in and ask for public records, it would be easier for you to go to those cities because you live there. Something like that. So give a thought to that. That to the extent you need to go into the local government office and pull records, look at the jurisdictions for which that would be easy for you. And you look at their website online first. You look for their planning department. You look for agendas. And the agendas tell you what the names and the identifying numbers are of the projects, and you start looking for minutes. For other documents that key you into a description of the project to see if it's going to meet your standard. You can, you know, some cities, and I have to say, probably Coconut Creek is one of the most helpful, that you might be able to pick up the phone and plead your case as a poor suffering student, and they remember they were planners who all have master's degrees, and they remember being in your chair, and they might help you find a project because they want to showcase the approvals and the projects that have been approved in their city. So you might be able to get help from the local government staff in selecting your project. But that's, once you know the jurisdiction where the project was approved, then you can focus on their website and looking at what records they have available. And again, except for Pembroke Park, which is basically a Coca-Cola bottling company and an industrial park and a bunch of trailer parks, most of these cities in Broward have a lot of stuff online. I'm less familiar with Miami-Dade, but I can always get what I need on Miami-Dade projects online when I need it.
What kind of analysis would you like for us to do? Like, why was it approved or not approved, or
yes,
basic parameters on zoning and site planning?
A description of the project, what was proposed, if substantial changes were made to the project in the course of the approval, you can talk about why that happened, that there was an objection to height from the neighbor, you know, from the neighbors. So the height of the condo tower was reduced by 3 stories. That would be something that you might identify in your review of the records and discuss in your presentation. That's the idea. You have to be able to, and we'll talk about all these concepts as you're working on this project. You'll need to be able to identify what the land use designation of the property is, what the zoning designation of the property is and was, what it was changed to, and what the permitted uses and some of the development standards were that were applied to the project, and get an understanding of how it got approved. Things that we see in these records all the time. Someone wants a yard variance or a yard waiver, and there will be an analysis done by the staff of whether that request meets the standards in the code. Those kind of things you'll identify as you go through the case study. Okay, general questions about the case? Yeah.
Is it a good idea to get an ongoing project that might be controversial because it's heard on the public and try to predict the outcome?
I don't really see a danger to that. If you're involved in the project, you know, I suppose that there could be some danger of it, but I don't see a lot of that this class study would contribute to much controversy for even an ongoing project. But if you find something that is ongoing and you're concerned about it, we can vet it and make sure that nobody here is actually involved in the project, or we can try to vet it and make sure it's not going to be a problem.
Would this case study involve something like assembling lands with different zoning characteristics, and then the intent is to get all of the lands rezoned for the intended purpose? That's one part of my question. The second part is, when is this case study due?
The case study is due, and I didn't bring my own printout of the case study will be due, I think it's the 3rd class. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, the 3rd class.
Okay, that's what I thought. So thanks. Our 3rd class is when we'll see presentations. Yeah.
What's the time limit on the presentation?
Group size teams of 2. The class is so big.
2 minutes.
I haven't gotten, I'm thinking about your question. 5 to 10 minutes on presentations. Because we have such a large class, I'm thinking of making it teams of 3. Does that make it better or worse for you because you're trying to coordinate too many people?
Probably better.
Better? Teams of 3 are better? Okay. You can, if you want to, work just as a team of 2, but you can do 3.
What are the formats?
The format will probably be a PowerPoint presentation of how you present your case study to the class. And I trust that you all are a lot better at PowerPoint than I am.
Do you have a model or something when you see?
The template.
Yes. So
I do
how
not.
was
I could-
1.8 and B until we back it down?
If I have these from last year, I'll look at them, and if I find a good example, I'll bring it in so you guys can see it. And there were some good examples.
For the case study, are we going to do a write-up as well, and then give you the write-up and then do the presentation in class?
If it's all in the presentation, I don't need a separate write-up.
Okay.
If the presentation does not include the identification of the land use, the zoning, the analysis of how the project met the zoning, you know, issues that were created by the project that had to be, overcome or addressed in the staff. If it doesn't include it all, then a write-up to supplement it would be necessary. Yes.
I was looking at your case study breakdown, and it says your final outcome. So therefore, I was thinking that an ongoing project wouldn't have a final outcome.
It would not have. It might have some, it might have enough other benefits of us being able to contemporaneously like monitor the project. So if, again, if one of you finds a project that has not gone through its final approval yet, that really fires your rockets, that you really want to pay attention to and follow, give me a call, let's talk about it, and we'll see if you can achieve what I want you to achieve in the assignment by doing that project. Okay, understand? Okay, other general questions about the case study project?
Must it be approved by you before we start?
Yes, but we're gonna do some of that in class, and you're gonna start now. You're gonna figure out your teams, and we're gonna spend some time. You guys, do you all have internet access now? I want you to start talking about, with your team members, the jurisdiction you want to look in first. Start looking at their website, and I'm here and available. We're gonna do some of it now. To look over your shoulder, to help guide you through the search process on their website and become a little bit more experienced at finding these projects. And who's like completely expert at navigating a city planning department website because of your work? Everybody pretty good at it already, some of you? Okay, well then it's a good time to say, for my benefit, so I don't treat you like idiots because you're all way more experienced, let's do introductions. That's the assignment. We'll come back to the research paper. This is what happens when I take these things because I'm old. My mind gets lost. Okay, so introductions. Start, if you will. You mind?
Irene Tamayo. I work in private equity.
What's your first name again?
Irene. Irene.
Oh, Irene. Okay.
Irene.
All right, go ahead.
I work in private equity. I've been doing real estate for quite some time. More than 15 years. I've been through different cycles, doing residential, mostly on the commercial side, but residential, shopping centers, residential, from the buyer side, and then I move on into private equity, and I've been doing that for the past 7 years.
So advising private equity on where to make investments?
I work and manage a private equity.
Okay, and they make decisions on whether to invest in projects?
Yes. Yeah. We invest in greenfield, repositioning, and operational projects, mostly in hospitality, but now we're expanding into general real estate.
Okay, so greenfield, so new coming out of the ground. Have you worked on existing projects?
Yes.
Diligence existing projects?
Yes.
Chad Maxey, I'm halfway through the program now, and due to the real estate field, I did an internship with an affordable housing company doing acquisition stuff for them, and then before that I was in the Army for 10 years, and I did do some civic engagements with stuff, but not specifically city planning stuff.
My name is Marianela. I work at Nova University. Also, I work I'm a realtor. So that's the only area I cover so far with the real estate. I'm doing residential now. I want to jump into commercial. I'm also have a biology undergrad, nothing to do with the real estate. And just exploring new areas of business.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Victor Hogan. I graduated college last year. This past year, I worked for a company in New York City doing acquisitions. So that was my first full-time job, and I learned a lot in the acquisition aspect of real estate. I wanted to explore my options and see where I can go with real estate.
My name is Kyle Thompson. I graduated in May with a degree in psychology. Relatively new to the real estate industry. I've been a residential realtor for probably about 6 months now. And just keeping an open mind, not really sure exactly what I want to do. Just kind of going from there.
Hey, my name is Emmanuel Alford. I'm a general contractor working in the construction industry, and this is my first exposure to the real estate development.
Hi, good morning. My name is JP Johnson. I'm currently employed at Fannie Mae as an asset manager. I've been experienced about 17 years on the residential side, and now I think this is the opportunity for me to learn the commercial side and the real estate development side of real estate.
I'm Carol Roy Jones. I'm a CPA. I've been in residential real estate investments for 7 or 8 years. I do a lot of tax planning and consulting on tax positions with real estate. I'm personally getting into development and wanting to understand more to do those figures and calculations.
Good morning, my name is Claudius Carnegie, and I'm a professional engineer. I'm both a student and an alumnus here at HOVA. And I've been, being a PE, I've been operating on the back end of development for a number of years. And I'm here to learn about the front end to try and find a niche that I can plug into my current corporation.
My name is Tyler Kitson. My last semester here.
Not that you're happy.
Anyway, no, I'm sad, very sad. I work for a developer now. Our headquarters is in West Palm Beach, but I'm currently at a master plan community over in Naples. So I have to make that lovely drive across Alligator Alley every weekend. But I look forward to, I've learned a lot from this program, and it's definitely opened my mind to a lot of areas that I was not, so knowledgeable about before. But yeah, that's about it.
My name is Quincy Smith. Graduated FIU a couple of years ago, about 5 or 10. I'm a recent retiree from the U.S. Army, so I give my time in that. Have a renovation company specializing in single-family home renovations, and I just got tired of picking and trying to find one houses. If I could do a neighborhood, that would be great.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Janae Valentine, originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I have a background in marketing. That's what I got my undergrad degree in. But right now, I got my real estate license, so I practice residential for like about a year down here. But right now, in this past summer, I've been interning with 170s in the commercial division, just trying to learn more about commercial real estate. So it's been a good experience for me.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lola Lopez. I'm a paralegal, been for many years. And in between doing paralegal work, I have done some real estate work. My mom's a realtor, so I've been helping her out for years as well. I've worked for title companies. I tried law school for a year, and I graduated with a criminal justice degree. And my goal, I'm thinking I want to go into retail development. Not sure yet where, how. I'm also trying to see if I can get a realtor license as well. Try that as well, just to also complement the program. And I think that's it.
My name is Andre Crawford. My undergrad is in civil engineering, getting into the real estate development. Work for a shell contractor. So, those are my options.
My name is Juan Maroso. I'm from Venezuela. This is actually my last class. I've had past experience in commercial development in Miami, and right now I'm working on a residential in Riverview, Louisiana.
And
Hi, my name is Marcela Polenta. I'm an engineer. I work in environmental studies and U25 and AP. And I'm just trying to relate the environment in this program.
Okay. Hi, my name is Portia. I had an accounting undergrad and then I went to law school. Got out of law school, did some document review for companies for a little bit. And then I ended up going back into finance as a tax analyst. Currently I'm a property tax analyst. And we do a lot of due diligence. So when we have our company, they want to mergers and acquisitions, or they want to develop something, we kind of help them with that process of, okay, this is what's going to happen. Also, I just partnered with somebody to open a business downtown West Palm Beach. So my passion really, and one of the reasons why I joined this program is because entrepreneurial reasons. I want to help small businesses grow and develop. So I just, in this new business that I just started, I help them go through the process of going to the city and getting their business license and zoning and all that good stuff. So that's kind of my passion.
Okay, so on the advisory side.
Yeah.
Got it.
My name is Tula Marna. I own restaurants. I have Flashback Diner, 3 of them, plus a LEED certified restaurant in Deerfield Beach, which was an RFP City of Deerfield Beach award. I own 3 out of the 4 commercial properties, and I want to expand via the combination of acquisition of real estate together with operating companies. It doesn't have to be a restaurant. It's just, that's how I started. I have a real estate license, and I found that it was far more profitable to own the real estate than to be in restaurants. So I'm changing over.
Good morning, my name is Jeff Hurd. I'm a finance hospitality student from FIU, where I really grew a passion for hotel development. I got a really varied background in everything from property management to some development to commercial sales, as well as real estate analysis. So I took a step back from the industry a little bit to work in facilities management, but I look forward to getting back into development really soon.
My name is Stephen Walsh. My undergrad is in finance and master's business and trade. I have a finance degree in indoor development. I currently work for a developer based in Boca Raton. We specialize in apartment development, more luxury. When I started as an analyst, kind of taking a first look at land, evaluating property, and as my role progressed, I assisted and supported the VPs with due diligence process, the approval process, and then ultimately project management. So I'm here today to kind of expand on my knowledge and hopefully one day on my own.
Hi, my name is Brennan Noodleman. I just graduated this past May. I got my undergrad in real estate finance. I chose this program because I thought it could go well, because at FSU I mainly just learned the finances in real estate, not really the development process. So I feel like they would complement each other pretty well. I also am working on an Aplex development with my dad as kind of like a first project type thing.
Good morning, I'm out for analysis, and this is new to me, the whole land development, but I think that I'm going to use it to learn more about zoning and stuff like that. So my background is public administration. I have my undergrad from FAU in public administration. I completed the master's program here in PA, but I had to come back to do the capstone and this additional class. But I believe that it's going to be very helpful to me. On a personal note, so I have published a book on public administration in French, and I'm working on the second one on decentralization and stuff like that. So I certainly believe that this will be some key issues. The knowledge will help me to address some key points. So I would appreciate that. I will use all
My name is Paul Tachi. I graduated from Florida State in 1993. With marketing and finance degrees.
Paul.
Like our instructor, I am old-fashioned. There were not computers when I was back in school, so this is somewhat of an adjustment for me, period. Relatively new to real estate, coming on my third year. I started off 8 months in residential, made the transition to commercial sales. Previously to that, I was in the corporate healthcare industry and medical device sales and management. Long story short, 2009 recession kind of ended that career, and I've begun a new career. And that's why I'm here to learn more about it and hopefully expand into development and real estate entrepreneurship as a long-term vision.
You're still much younger than me, but we can together say, get off my lawn, you crazy kids.
My name is Eric Williams. I got my undergrad in legal studies and criminal justice. I'm currently a paralegal. For the past 8 years or so, I'm new to the development. I'm interested in getting to know about commercial properties. I would like to own them and lease them, but I'm not exactly quite sure yet. So hopefully I'll figure that out during this program.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I just graduated at FAU with a bachelor's in urban planning in December. And I've been working with developers, project managing, and now I work for architects slash developers. They do a little bit of both. Since I was 19, I'm more interested in like high-end residential and hospitality. I did an internship last summer in New York City in like hot, super high end. It was amazing and beautiful, and I learned a lot.
My name is Alex. I'm halfway through the program. I started residential real estate about 2 years ago after graduating from Florida State in economics. My father got a broker in South Florida for over 40 years. After that, I made the switch over to commercial this summer. I started working for Styles Realty. I did a market research internship, focusing on retail development for Publix, Chipotle, Walmart, and Starbucks. Right now, I did my internship, and I'm working on putting in the future Chipotles, working with a past student in this program, seeing what we can do. Probably looking to get into land acquisition or retail development after I'm done talking to a few companies right now. The program's been great so far. I've learned a lot, and that's really about it.
Well, I'm impressed by all of you. You bring a wealth of experience, some of it far different from mine, and I'm like, I am awed by you all. You all have a lot to offer one another, and I'm sure I will learn from you also. One of the things that as an attorney, that I like so much about land use law is that it is local, on the ground, getting things done, and it has this big, highfalutin constitutional overtone to it. So it is both practical and fiddly and technical, and it gets you thinking great thoughts about what the limits are of government power and what purposes they're permitted to act for and not. And it's that confluence that makes this area of the law so interesting. And most of the time, you can keep your head down and pedal through a project without encountering those big thoughts, but you need to be aware of the context that you're working in the law, because there are limits and to what government can do and what you can achieve working through government that are constitutional. They're like, big stuff. So having this kind of larger understanding, I think, is helpful, even when your work has your head down in the plans, pedaling furiously to just get through the next approval.
Have you really found that to be the case, though? Because the reality is it seems like whenever the government wants to do something, they're going to get to do something. I know I read through a lot of case studies, and it seemed like pretty much when the government wanted to do something, they kind of did it. And it's like, yeah, there might have been one or two exceptions to that, but the vast majority of the time, the government's going to do what they want to do.
It is true the vast majority of the time, but there are limits, and it's one reason I wanted you guys to read the Coons case. Okay? There are limits, and when those limits are exceeded, you lose everything. You know, everything that the government was trying to achieve is then undermined, and if they behaved in a more reasonable way, everyone would have gotten to the right end. But there are limits, and it's sometimes, let me try to think of an example. A project that my partner was working on, they were rolling along, getting approvals under one set of facts for school concurrency. And then the rules changed, and the city wouldn't allow them to adopt the more lenient rules because they thought they had them by the short hairs. They were good. They were contractually obligated to pay, you know, $6,000 per unit when a new project coming in under the new rules would have paid a third of those impact fees. So they had to sue, and that goes back to the constitutional basis for the assessment of impact fees. And it was going to make the difference between $6,000 per unit and $700 or $800 per unit. And they fought it, and they're winning. I think it's going to get settled, but it's been a very long process. So you have to have a sense of, you know, if this is just blatantly not fair and I can't make this work for my project, lift your head, talk to a lawyer, and figure out when those things are worth challenging. But you do need to understand the context. And sometimes you can work with staff and you can help them with your own attorney see that, do you see that what you're asking here is not reasonable? My impact is X and you're asking me to mitigate X times 10? You know, if the rules say that, there's something wrong with the rules. Do you really want us to have your entire rule book thrown out because we have to sue you? Let's find a better way to do this. But if you're not aware of the issue, you can't even push. You don't even know where to push with the staff. So that's why I want you to get an understanding of the context of land use regulation. Yeah.
Yeah, your comments kind of provoked a thought here that oftentimes in some of the cases that I've read, the courts seem to have discretions that they can exercise as to whether or not they want to listen or hear the case. So with that kind of backdrop, I mean, what guarantees do we have, even with the constitutional support, to win some of these challenges and also the cost associated with it?
Litigation is always very expensive. And it is something that if you're on the developer's team and you're consulting with lawyers about suing the local government, it's never the place you want to be. But, and this I will not make you spend time on, but there are rules to get in the door on these cases that are very complex and they're contradictory. And they have to do with standing. And whether you've exhausted administrative remedies before the court will hear the case. So it is a very difficult road to hoe. Is that true? Yes. To litigate a land use case. But if you don't, but the first step is understanding what the limits of government should be. And then you can work with staff to stay within those limits, get them what they need, get you what you need, and understanding that you can have this discussion with them. You know, you can't change the rules on me. You can't unfairly burden my property when you don't do this to a similarly situated property. That's normal everyday language. That's equal protection. You don't have to say, I can sue you for about, you can appeal to their fairness, but it comes in the context of you understanding what the limits of government are. So we will not all become constitutional scholars. I am not a constitutional scholar. I will be the first to tell you. I mean, I did have the opportunity to litigate some fun cases when I was in county government. For a while, they called me smut buster. Because when I was a very young lawyer, I really wasn't good for much of anything at all. So my boss, Tag, had dragged me along with her on a case she was working on, which was trying to shut down an adult nightclub on a zoning basis. First Amendment, you wouldn't, it's one of the, it's hard to believe that an adult nightclub is a First Amendment issue, but of course it is, because exotic dancing is First Amendment expressive activity. It is. I see a few of you smiling here. And in the course of that, I tried a case in federal court and argued an appeal in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals and filed a writ opposing jurisdiction in the United States Supreme Court on that case. And for years, I would get calls out of the blue. I'm busy doing something else. I want to talk to you about the Dollhouse 3 case. I'm like, this is not my life. You know? I'm not an expert in adult nightclubs. And I was very, very young, and it was an interesting time. So land use litigation, when it happens, can be very interesting to a lawyer. But we're not here to become, you know, land use lawyers. I want you, again, to understand in a broad sense what the source is of land use regulation, where the power comes from that the local governments exercise, and then what its limits are, so that you can work within it. The next slide is about the other assignment, which will be a research paper. Do we want to come back to this after you guys start working on your case study a bit, or let's just go through this. Okay. There will be a research paper that will be due on the last class. The topic can be very broad. I will give you some suggestions, but it simply needs to be a topic related to this course, to the course material, land use regulation. And when I go through some of the examples, you'll get an idea of what directions we can go. It is a maximum of 15 pages. A maximum of 15 pages. And of course, you've all heard about, you know, you've heard cautions about plagiarism, and I caution you again that there will be no second chance for any scenario in which you are caught plagiarizing. Grammar, spelling, punctuation, these things will cost you. A well-organized, persuasive paper will benefit you. It's not a writing course, but you'll do a lot of writing in this industry. The day will come when you'll need to write a justification. Maybe your lawyer will review it for you. But on a small project, if you can handle it yourself, it'll save you a lot of money not to hire the likes of me. And you'll need to write a justification that will have to persuade someone to move forward with your project or support your project. So becoming a good writer is very beneficial in this industry. You'll need to run your topics by me and get the topics approved. Here's a little bit more about source citing. I said this at the orientation. I am not an expert in academic citation. I know legal citation, but most of that's not going to be the materials that you're going to be using. So I'm not saying that I'm going to bird dog the accuracy of all of your citations. I'm going to be focused on whether you do cite. I simply do not want you to make factual assertions without citing source material in some fashion. So some of the topics. You know, the growth management law in Florida, we will spend time going through some of its history and its changes and where we are right now. Florida was probably the second state that really went full bore with comprehensive planning. Well, maybe Oregon and Washington both did first. But it's got a long history back to the 80s. Comprehensive plans in Florida are like little constitutions for land use law in each jurisdiction. They're enforceable. They're enforceable by lawsuits. They're mandatory in many other states. They are advisory only, and it's only the zoning law itself that's enforceable and has the force of law. But in Florida, adopted comprehensive plans have the force of law in the local government. So there's a lot of topics within this. The history, the changes to the rules. You can compare these growth management systems. I mentioned some of them. There are some other states in which growth management laws have a lot of strength and enforceability, in other states where they do not. Someone could do an analysis of those two different kinds of planning statutes, planning laws. Do some work on the quasi-judicial procedure. We'll learn this in Florida. Certain types of land use approvals must occur in a quasi-judicial setting. We'll learn what that means. who's benefited by that process. Smart growth, who's familiar with the term smart growth? We have some lead professionals. Is smart growth a familiar term to you? So there's a lot of articles, a lot of material has been written on smart growth and its benefits. Somebody could do a paper in some aspect of smart growth. I've always been fascinated by the health effect of development decisions. The loss of walkability, the loss of intergenerational housing opportunities that has occurred because of the separation of uses that comes with zoning. I would really enjoy if someone would do that work for me and teach me a little bit more about how smart growth can advance a more healthful environment in development. Proposals to improve a typical local land use. If in the course of your case study you encounter a local government that is a morass, a morass of conflicting, illogical, and you want to sort it out for them and propose amendments to the changes to their process that would make it more efficient, that would be awesome. Improve a typical process, yes.
Historical overlays, like in a really dense area, would that fall under proposals to improve typical local government?
It would certainly be a suitable topic for a paper.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the historic preservation and economic impacts is something else I'm suggesting. I don't know if I will be able to get the speaker in here. I have a client in downtown Miami who has a historic property, and our guys in our Miami office have just obtained for them the largest approval of transferable development rights that the city of Miami has ever issued. So we will talk about historic preservation and some of the mechanisms that are used by local governments, and the primary one is transferable development rights to try to keep the historic property viable. I hope I can get my colleague from Miami to come talk to you about that. So these are some of the other topics you might focus on for a research paper. A community outreach strategy, and again, if your experience and your interest is more on the side of the community activist, or you want to understand that perspective, go out there and find a good example or figure out a good way of developing a community outreach program for a difficult project. What would it involve? Community associations, reaching out to those leadership people, setting up charrettes or community meetings, and always bring food and whatever the project would require. So impact fees. Impact fees can be a very large part of your budget, and sometimes they are what they are. So they don't. If you work in the development industry in a jurisdiction all the time, you kind of know they're in the background. But for a new entrant, the amount of those fees can come as a shock to them. And most of the time now, they're not paid until building permit. So you go through all the approval process, and if you haven't taken it into account, you're like, I have to pay what to get my building permit? It's just overwhelming. But again, there are limitations. There are limits. There's a context in which impact fees can be adopted and enforced, and they have their limits. And how they are administered can render them invalid. So some work on impact fees. There's a lot of material there. A diligence report. I used to have a sample in my materials. I'm sure that I can find another sample of a typical zoning diligence report. And I say typical, they're not really typical. Some investors want a report in a certain format, and it's very, very summary. And other developers contemplating buying raw land want a very extensive diligence analysis. So they can come in many different forms. But identifying a piece of vacant property and doing a diligence report on it would be a good paper. Analysis of effective environmental permitting. This is, again, environmental permitting can come kind of as a sideline to this local development permitting process. And we'll cover some of the interaction. But it can also seriously, derail a project. I'm working on a small project where we've considered moving a seawall out to gain more land for the project. And all things considered, in the end, the additional 1-year permitting process we would have gone through was not worth the land we were going to gain. So we ended up abandoning it. But we needed to analyze it early in the project so we could incorporate that into our schedule and our designs of the project. So the environmental permitting, you need to be aware of what's going to apply and when it's going to come into effect and incorporate it into planning. But some study of the effect of environmental permitting on land use permitting would be a good topic. And then historic preservation, we mentioned. So those are the ideas for research papers. What did I say? You need to get it approved by
October 3rd.
That's our third. Also, and you can get it approved as early as you want if it's something you want to start working on concurrently with your case study. Yes.
Do you have a template as to exactly what to expect in terms of the presentation of the research paper, your cover sheet, how should that be formulated?
I do not have a template. I do not care if you have a cover sheet. I would like it to be at least 1.5 line spacing so that my old eyes can read. And electronic is fine, paper is fine. Again, form is not particularly important to me. Writing complete sentences, make it readable. Introduce your topic. Give me a few sentences on what the bottom line is going to be, that you're going to that you're going to analyze a certain topic and your outcome, and then take me through your study process. But I do not have a template.
What's strict APA style?
I wish that this was to be recorded. I wouldn't know it if it fell on my head. Again, I'm so far away from the undergraduate style of research. And law school was even a really long time ago for me. So I want you to give me citations. I want you to put it in a format that I can, that is persuasive if you're trying to persuade me, or that's clear. And I want citations where I can back check your research if I choose to. I understand that it would be easier for you in a sense if I would give you a template, but there's not a lot of templates in life. So I'm describing to you, I want a research paper on a topic that's related to this class. I want you to learn something, and then I want you to be able to describe to me what you've learned from the topic that you studied.
Like the topic, for example, the analysis of the effect of environmental permitting and settlement process. If we were to write about something like that, you want like a broad analysis, or can we kind of hone in on a specific project, for example?
You can do either one. You can do either one.
What's the minimum page number?
15?
She said maximum 15, right?
Yeah, there's no minimum. It's got to be worth your time to do and my time to read. And when I say maximum is the most important, because you can really think about it. Any of you could write 15 pages on what you do for a living right now with very little. It's not a lot of space, guys. Okay, go ahead.
This might be a crazy request, but can you do 2 papers? And if you can, what would be the effect of this grades to your overall grade?
Like, can you?
Can I do 2 papers, 2 different topics, and turn them both into as final research papers?
What I would do is, I don't want 2 papers from everyone. I won't have the time to read 2 papers from everyone. So no, I will not accept 2 papers. Hmm?
I was thinking out loud when I said that. But I'm retired. I don't have nothing to do. I can do 2 papers. I can do 2 papers.
You can just do everybody's paper.
I'm
That's
just
what you
saying,
do.
I can do 2 papers, it wouldn't bother me.
That's
Claudius?
Yeah, I was just combing through your syllabus here to see if I could find weights for all of these assessment instruments, and I don't see that. Could you comment on that or provide us with some guidelines as to how each of these assessments will be weighted?
I guess I have not. Let me give that some thought.
You can issue an addendum to the syllabus if you
Thank you. Thank you for that permission. I will let you know. Based on some experience I've had with these assignments in the classes past, I've weighted them equally. The midterm, final, research paper, case study, all equally in the past. But I think it might be worth some thought to reweigh those. So I will let you know.
Is it necessary to have a midterm? Can I advocate for us not having a midterm?
Well, I hear you, but without a midterm, you will have 3 grades. And I got used to it in law school. You know, we sat through class, and you had nothing other than a final exam, and that was your whole grade.
Awesome.
Doesn't scare me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it scares you. If you feel like you need some feedback from a midterm that allows you to evaluate, and I also, okay, let's do it this way. I'm going to give you a midterm. I'm going to let you choose whether to throw out the midterm. So it gives you an opportunity to see if you're on the right track. That wasn't clear. Do you understand? I'll drop a grade.
Yes.
I will drop your midterm grade if you choose, your midterm exam grade. But it's very familiar material to some of you. It's very unfamiliar to others of you. And I thought it would be helpful to you if you could get an interim bit of feedback on how you're comprehending the material. Yes?
Is there a layout as to like how the material will be?
It will be a combination of multiple choice and short answer.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is, one of my first law school classes in criminal law. The professor gave us a midterm, and I did horribly on it. And I learned so much from it because I looked at the questions and I wrote the essay that my answer focused on the very best 3 issues. And I learned they don't want the best issues, they want all the issues. And I was better off writing less on a dozen issues that I could spot with my eyes that reflected my understanding of the question than by doing the most thorough. And if I hadn't had that midterm opportunity, I would have been in a world of hurt by the time I did my final exam. So maybe I learned a lot from that. And I'm trying to give you that opportunity to get some feedback on whether you're comprehending the material, whether you need to focus on something. Okay? So I think that's what we'll do. And I will let you know what the weighting of other assignments will be.
And replace that midterm with the second paper.
And I'm still going to say no to a second paper because you're welcome to write it. I'm just not going to promise to read it. It's a big class, and that's a big time commitment for me too, to really thoroughly evaluate everything that you turn into me. And I want to be fair to all of you, to be able to make the grade you want. Okay, the research paper, we've been through the case study. So this is the exam, and this is how I've done the exam before because the classes, the participants have all been pretty much employed. What I would do is email, you'd have a choice between like maybe 2 days, and I would email you the exam, and you'd have to return it to me within 24 hours, and you'd have a choice between Tuesday or Wednesday, or something like that. We'll pick the days.
That's a take-home midterm.
So it's a take-home midterm. And I did the final that way, you know, also, but I'm kind of reserving the right to have you sit in the class and write a final for me.
On the October 3rd deadline for selecting and committing to our research paper, how do you want to be notified of that? For us to come to class or send an email?
You may do, if we talk about it in class and we agree that your topic is acceptable, I'll want you to send me an email to confirm it. If you want to send me a topic by email, I'll respond to it.
Okay.
And we can use any of the emails, or you'd rather use?
I would rather that you use my business email, my GT Law email.
Right, got it.
Any other questions about this kind of process? Again, I'll share the PowerPoint presentations with you. Have you been using Blackboard? Does somebody have a Google Drive or something that you've been using for the class and sharing? Okay, so I'll end up sending you a link to a Google Drive.
I know Dr. Fergie has a Dropbox.
A Dropbox?
For the class. But I guess it is his own Dropbox, so, and what we used to do with the other classes is, you know, he has a Dropbox and he would tell us to just access whatever PowerPoint or any, you know, any information for class, and we all had the password and we would just access everything in there. I mean, you can do a folder for this class and just put all the documents that you want us to access. That's the easiest way, I think, for.
Well, and that's what I'm contemplating
No,
with
the
my Google
LMS is a lot
Drive.
easier.
Pardon?
The LMS, Blackboard, is a lot easier. I mean, the Dropbox and all kinds
Yeah,
of.
but if the professor doesn't know how to use it, you know,
to access.
Blackboard is email.
Yeah.
See, I hear people who are comfortable with it and have a lot of success with it. I just have not used it. Even when my kids were in high school and they used it,
But Google Drive very easy. It's just
It's almost like Dropbox.
Okay, so I'll send you a link to a folder on Google Drive.
Okay.
Okay.
And thankfully, I have a husband who's a tech guy, so I have I have my tech team at home. So he'll explain it to me how to do it, and then I won't remember, and he'll have to explain it to me again.
Or you'll do it for you.
Or he'll do it for me. He keeps threatening to change all of my passwords to I forgot. I hang my head in shame.
Yeah.
And part of it is that I know I don't have to. Because he's there. We've been married, it'll be 30 years this month. So, and I'm like, I feel guilty, and then I have many skills that he does not have. So I say, yeah, you guys should look how to do that. There's a balance to it. Okay, we have done introductions. We've done this. We've done this. All right. Any other questions about about class structure, things we've talked about so far?
Second paper, please.
All right. Planning. We have at least one planner in the class.
Yeah.
So, working in land development, especially in an urbanized area, you will always be working with planners. And there will be parts of the country and the state where you won't really have professional planners to work with. If you go into Central Florida, they might or might not have professional planners on staff. They might use consulting planners so that they're not there all the time for you to confer with. And they handle the planning services for multiple cities. But you'll encounter, especially in a state like Florida where growth management is mandated and every local government must adopt and enforce a comprehensive plan, you'll encounter planners. So it's kind of a confluence of economics and policy. They advise their government really on what should be built and where. And they're supposed to give consideration to who's benefited by different development scenarios and evaluate who's going to bear the burdens of different kinds of development. they measure impact, and this is a big part of processing development approvals, is impact. Some things are so measurable, like parking and traffic, that they become the tail that wags the dog, okay? When neighborhoods want to object to a project, it's parking and traffic, because they can find, those things are counted, and it'll be a big number, and they can complain about that number, it's quantifiable. Other things, like noise, shadow, that residential is going to draw other kinds of uses like parks and schools. Those impacts are a little less quantifiable. But what planners in the process do is evaluate those impacts and try to quantify them. Mobility, especially not especially in urban areas. Mobility is a big issue, right? In the urban area, we just simply cannot keep widening roads to accept more cars, to move more people in their cars. It's sucking up all the land, and it's not the kind of land we want to live in. So alternative forms of mobility are driving development decisions a lot right now. In rural areas, it's kind of a different thing. People become isolated if there are no paved, no decent roads between the uses that they need to reach, and when they're in rural areas. Do I sound less competent with rural areas? Yes, I am, because I live in an urban area. But the effect of mobility on different sectors of the population is also an issue now. Mobility for millennials is a different concern than mobility for retirees, and what kind of assistance, what kind of support they need to remain mobile and independent. Financing. Planning underlies, in a sense, some of the financing decisions in local government, but there's really not the direct connect that you would expect. The local government will develop a budget for the services they need to provide and allocate it through the taxing process. But sometimes they work well with planners to plan the future tax base. That if development occurs in a certain sequence, in a certain way, it's going to grow the tax base, and the government and the local government can plan for that growth in their capital improvement planning. And planners also really can be very helpful in building the consensus that is needed for a project or a large or a challenging project to move forward. And they can bring all those different disciplines together in a way that can express the project to a lay person or a group of lay people. Has anyone, okay, and you're an engineer, and you're obviously very well spoken, but have you ever encountered engineers who don't seem like they can speak English, who can't speak human being languages because they live in a very technical world and communication is not something they're trained in? Okay, so if engineers were driving this process, there would be a failure of communication between the technical specialists and the community of lay people who are going to live there. Planners, I think their skills help bridge that gap quite a bit. So a lot of the literature that we'll encounter and what we'll read is really guided and driven by professional planners. So we've talked some about this. This is kind of the big picture. You need to understand the whole process of land development to participate in each step. And it adds, the goal, of course, is to add value to the land, even before the project gets built. When the entitlements are in place, and they have all been secured properly, and they're all documented properly, and you understand the period of validity of all of those approvals, that land increases in value, even before dirt is turned. But I don't want you, we tend to come into this program from the perspective of the developer. It's an industry, it's a money-making industry that we all want to be part of. And that tends to be our perspective. But I don't want you to lose track of the community concerns and the lifestyle issues. what gets built and where, whether it's high quality or not, whether it's fully taken into account the negative impact that the development's going to create. All of those things affect quality of life, and some of it in the neighborhoods and the communities that you live in, that you want to raise your families in. It can create something very generic and forgettable, another strip mall that looks just like all the other strip malls. Or it can create something that's memorable, that helps define a community, that creates pride in the community. So don't be so focused on the deal. And I know the deal's got to make money, or none of us keep our jobs. But don't become so focused on the deal that you lose the perspective of the community impact of what a development project can do. Okay, the basis of authority for land use law. What time is it? Do you guys need a break yet, or can we go longer? You need a break? Okay, like 5 minutes? Okay, quick break.
And I might have the opportunity to work with different parts of the
Oh, there's snacks. I'm gonna go eat my banana. It seems safer.
I had a banana and I was like running over here and it exploded.
Oh no! I'd be mad.
Well, I know that I was like the person excited
That's like the military, man. I'm military logistics officer. Oh, okay. We'll have to do stuff like this for a couple of days. Yeah, so doing the paper and doing the review and presentation and doing that. You gotta do that. You get signed that Monday, Thursday. You're eager. Yeah, that's like, hey, I can do 2 weeks in a couple of weeks.
Chewy, I'll get some of these.
Little Quince, do you do
I haven't done anything Miami Dade. I live
I got my business license is out of that. So I gotta get a operator's license.
Are you trying to get basically, like, I'm just looking at this.